This is Out of the Box with your host, Jonathan Clark. Out of the Box, Sunday nights at 9 on Q1043.
Rock and Roll Hall of Famer Alice Cooper joins us, and he has a new song out, and as usual, lots of other things going on too. All the info at alicecooper.com. And we're going to talk about all that. But first, Alice, how are you, the family? Everyone is healthy, I hope.
Everybody out here is absolutely fine. We have a good big place out in the desert, and I've got all the kids here. I got 3 studios in the house, so they're busy at all times. One of my son-in-laws is a sound engineer, and then I have the radio show studio and then a voiceover studio. So, everybody's fine, though. My daughter's getting ready to give us our first daughter grandchild.
Oh, fantastic. Congratulations, man.
Yeah, we got 3 boys. Now we need a little girl to run the whole place.
Well, let me ask you this. Is this the longest time you have spent at home in like a long time?
It is so insane. For us to have 3 weeks off is like weird. Between the Alice Cooper show and the Hollywood Vampires, I'm on tour. I mean, we did 191 cities last year. We've already canceled 130 cities. Not canceled, but postponed. So to be home in Arizona from June to August, we're not used to being at home in the summertime. I forgot what 118 was.
Well, so, and I've been asking this of other artists and bands that have been on the show recently, have all these tour dates, have you just said, okay, forget it, 2021, here we come, we're not going to even try and do anything in this year?
We had dates all the way up to October 30th, Mexico City, big outdoor show in Mexico City. And they informed us that's gone because that's sort of like the main place where the disease is right now in Mexico is Mexico City. And November, December, everybody would love to be out there. Every band I know is like a racehorse in the starting gates ready to go. 2021 is going to be a glut of touring and an awful lot of music coming out because I think all the musicians are home recording right now.
Alice Cooper is with us. His new song, Don't Give Up, is appropriate for these times, of course, and I've been playing it on this show. And, Alice, you can use that term really at any time, but especially now. Tell us about the song and how it came together.
Well, I wrote an album about Detroit. Called Detroit Stories. Bob Ezrin and I worked on it. We actually recorded it in Detroit with Detroit musicians. All the guys that we used to play with at the Easttown Ballroom there in Detroit. All for guys from MC5 and Mitch Ryder's band and all that. And so that album had a song called "Hanging by a Thread," which was about suicide. The B section and the chorus were. That's what the verse came, and I went like this. I said, why don't we change the verse and direct it towards the virus? So Alice is basically talking to the virus and kind of telling it, we're tired of you. We're not the victims anymore. Sort of getting off the canvas and punching the bully in the nose and giving the audience less of a victim stance and more of a offense stance. And I think Alice talking to a virus would be kind of appropriate for Alice. He would be able to talk to a virus.
Oh, absolutely. And there's a great video for that song where your head, and I was reminded of almost the Salvador Dali thing from way back in the day, which yes. I want to get to briefly a little bit later. But the video is you inside this spinning circular globe singing "Don't Give Up," and it's like I think is it 7 billion people on the planet now or something?
7 billion people, and I one of the lines is, "Hey, you've got 7 billion brothers and sisters all in the same boat." When you think of it, in the 60s, in the 50s and 60s, anytime you saw a movie about aliens invading the world, Russia, China, America, everybody was on the same side against that enemy. Well, that's what this is now. It's everybody in the world is on the same side against this virus, and it's the first time I've ever seen that happen. So we opened it up and said to everybody in the world and just said, send in a video clip, with one of the words for the songs. We were expecting 1,000, maybe 2,000. We stopped it at 25,000 because people were just wanted to be involved in this video, and we added every race, every color, every creed, because we were all against one thing.
It's so great. The song is Don't Give Up, It's New from Alice Cooper. And you were mentioning Detroit Stories before. So that is an album that is almost complete and it's going to come out at some point?
It's all done. It's actually all done. Bob Ezrin right now is, sometimes you get a great producer like Bob Ezrin who's done everybody from Pink Floyd to Kiss to Alice Cooper to everybody you can imagine. And if you give them too much time and a finished album, they'll start remixing it. It's just part of it. I don't care what producer it is. I don't care if it's George Martin. He'll sit in there going, you know what? I think I could remix that a little bit differently. So it's all done. It's ready to go. And honestly, I don't know when it would come out, but it's finished and it rocks. I mean, Detroit has always been the home of hard rock. New York always had its sound. L.A. had its sound, the Doors. San Francisco had, the Jefferson Airplane and everybody. New York had its sound, with the Young Rascals and those bands at that time. Detroit was always hard rock. It was the Iggy and the Stooges, the MC5, Seeger, Nugent, Alice Cooper. We were sort of the hard rock capital there. And so I thought that this album, I should dedicate an album to Detroit because it's a bit of the outsider city. It's kind of any city that re-elects a mayor who got caught smoking crack and they re-elect him. That's kind of an outside city, and I've always looked at Alice Cooper as being sort of an outsider myself. So we kind of pinpointed Detroit as being our kind of place.
Now, I received something, I think last fall, late fall 2019. It was a Bob Seger song, East Side Story, which I believe was on an EP called Breadcrumbs. Now, is that sort of evolving into Detroit Stories, or what's the difference between Breadcrumbs and Detroit Stories?
That's exactly it, Jonathan. It was that's what we called it, Breadcrumbs. It was leading into this album, and the whole thing was to take 6 songs and record them in Detroit. And even with punk bands that don't even exist anymore, we took a couple of their songs and Cooperized them. And then we took like a Mitch Ryder, Devil with the Blue Dress On, and did a different take on that. Wrote 2 or 3 songs that were purely Detroit, about Detroit. And that was to sort of, I've never done an EP before. So it was sort of like to whet everybody's appetite for what was coming up with the Detroit album. And I think that, there may be a thing here where when you get the album, you may be getting the EP also, or you may have an option to get the EP. So I've never done an EP before, but it was kind of fun to do kind of a teaser.
And back in 2011, Rob Zombie inducted Alice Cooper into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Do you have any really cool remembrances from that night that come to mind immediately?
That's one of those things where when you realize a lot of people thought we were already in the Hall of Fame. That was one of the reasons why we came in so late. People that when we came on the ballot, everybody went, wait a minute, he's not already in the Hall of Fame? So when we did get in, it was, what it is you're getting voted in by the very people that you listen to, and people like Jeff Beck and Mick Jagger and the people, they get their ballots and they see all the people on the ballot and then they vote for you. So what you're really getting is confirmation from your teachers. It's sort of like graduating, into the class. And that's what makes it really satisfying is it's not a board of people deciding who gets in. It's the actual artists that you grew up with that are voting on you. And to me, that makes it really special to think that, some of the guys that I listened to when I was a kid are saying that it's cool that I'm in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Well, I mean, what a compliment that is.
You mentioned Hollywood vampires briefly before, Johnny Depp, Joe Perry, yourself. And so any plans for new music for that group and 2021?
Well, Rise came out. Our second album came out, which was mostly new material that we did. The first album was our tipping the hat to all of our dead drunk friends. And then the second album was, sort of much more original music. And while Johnny's been in France writing, and he's been out with Jeff Beck. I think he's been doing a lot of writing with Jeff Beck. And Joe, of course, out with Aerosmith. And then I'm here. So we're writing a lot. When we get together, there's going to be a ton of music that we're going to go through and just probably be able to go in. And I would love to do the album live in the studio because the band is so tight that we could just go in and do it live. I would rather do that than to layer it and layer it and layer it, like you do normally on a production album. To me, let the band be the band. Let them get in and just play it live.
I had Shep Gordon on this show a while ago, your longtime manager, when he put his book out, They Call Me Supermensch, and that was great. And I would be remiss if I did not mention that my father, I hope you remember this name, Ren Gravatt.
Yes.
Was hired by Shep. That's my dad. He was hired by Shep to do your press back in the 70s, I think around $1 Billion Babies, maybe before that too. And I had Shep call my dad when he... Yeah, and so they got to reconnect. I had Shep call my father. And the story my father always loved to tell was the Salvador Dali one at the hotel here in Manhattan with the hologram and the whole thing. Around that time, my parents took me to Florida on vacation to stay with friends in Miami. One day, my father and I headed over to the Marco Polo Hotel to see you and Shep. I think my father had a bunch of phone interviews for you to do. So he came over, gave you a list. You started making phone calls to press people around the country to promote the tour. I will never forget that, man. I was like 10 years old or something.
That is so funny. I haven't heard that name in so long, but I certainly remember because, I was doing 10, 15 interviews a day. In those days, when a record came out, you recorded, and then you went on tour, promoted the record, and then when that tour was over, you made another record, and you went on tour. And there was no downtime because during the day, you were doing interviews with everybody. I was doing, honestly, 15 interviews a day. And then the show that night, and then you get to the next city. But I remember Ren. Yeah, that's amazing. I did not know that. You only have to say hi for me, all right, and tell him I'm not doing any interview. Tell him I'm doing only an interview with you today.
Yeah, I will say hi to him in spirit. He left this earth about 5 years ago,
sorry.
but he had a great life. He lived to be 94. He was on the side. Yeah, he was on the side of the stage with Cynthia Lennon when the Beatles did Ed Sullivan for the first time. So, he had been around a long time, but, I never forget how much he loved you and working with Shep. And again, my father always told the Salvador Dali story. He just loved that so much. So I'm glad you remember him, and I'm glad I got to tell you my remembrances of you and Shep back in the day. And when I was speaking to Shep, he told me, and I think this is in his book, that Jimi Hendrix told Shep that he should manage a band, and you guys were it.
Yes. I knew Jimi back from, I met Jimi early on, and in fact, the first time I ever smoked one of those funny cigarettes, he passed it to me, and we got to know each other, and the very next thing I know, he comes over and he says, I got this guy I want you to meet. We would go over to Shep, Matt Shep, and Shep and I have been together now 52 years, and we still don't have a contract together. And it's just, totally trust, he's my best friend. And we that if you can have a relationship like that for 52 years and still going, hard, going. There's no end, there's no retirement at all even thought about, in this thing. So it's great having somebody that you can trust like that, in that position.
Alice Cooper is his name. Don't Give Up is the new song. You can see the video everywhere. We're going to play that new song from Alice right now. And Alice, it's been a real honor to speak with you. I look forward to Detroit Stories. I look forward to even more you coming to New York City with your band or the Hollywood Vampires and playing a real show, melting our faces. I can't wait for all this to be over.
I can't either. And when we do come backstage and say hi, okay?
Definitely will. Alice, thank you so much.
Thanks a lot, Jonathan.
This is Out of the Box with your host, Jonathan Clark. Out of the Box, Sunday nights at 9 on Q1043.